So we have two types here. Like I said, so one is HANA Cloud and the HANA database. So basically, HANA Cloud with only the database option will give you the in-memory database. Like we discussed, it supports multi-model, meaning it supports a lot of variety of data. So it supports geo, it supports now vector and all those things. Whereas if you also require very large, data files to be stored, very large in the terms of in the size of TBs, terabytes, right? So if you require a lot of data, which is not usually structured, right? So it is like semi-structured or unstructured. For example, you want to store a lot of text data which is extracted from social media, say for example Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, about a customer, and all this data is in text files which is unstructured or semi structured. So these types of files are generally, for example, if you take a world leading company, these files tweet about a particular brand, say McDonald's, there will be millions and billions of tweet. So if you write a program to extract all those tweet as a text and then store them in a file, that file is going to be huge. So storing such files in normal HANA cloud as a table is challenging because of two reasons. One is, first you have to add structure, right? You have to do some data cleaning and data preparation and make them into table structure. And second thing is the size is going to be too huge. And for a normal HANA cloud, everything is in memory. So that's going to be a very costly setup for your customer. So for that reason, if you have huge files, generally the customers go for data lake. So you have to understand, whether your customer only needs HANA Cloud and the in-memory database, or they also want this data lakes. What I see is some customers make the mistake of choosing the data lake even though they don't want a data lake. But the problem is generally the data lake, the chunks or the sizing comes in TBs because the overall volume will be in petabytes. So each increment itself is in terabytes, right? So if your customer does not want a data lake for now, but if you are thinking, let me just add a data lake just to be future proof or something, then you cannot add like 256 GB or 512 GB, something like that. You have to buy 1 TB, 2 TB, 3 TB like that. So that is waste, right? So make a decision, informed decision, talk to your customer, explain them what is their purpose and understand. And then as an administrator, make the right decision to go for the perfect database type. Okay.
So can we add the data lake as a instance separately later on?
Yes, that's a
Okay.
good question. Yes, you can add it. So when you're starting out, and especially with this cloud instances, it doesn't matter. Like you can add it in the existing SAP HANA instance also. But in general, you can also create a separate instance and you can keep, all the in-memory database related files in a separate instance. And then whatever data lake you want as a separate instance also. And that is generally how the customers follow it. But yeah, if you want to edit an existing instance and then add a data lake, that is also possible. Okay, so here is an important detail, like you can choose which version of HANA you want to go for. Generally, some customers go for the N, which is the latest version, and some customers go for N-1 for stability. So, I mean, again, it is a customer choice whether they want the latest features or they want stability. So, if they say, yeah, we want latest features and we are okay with finding a couple of more bugs, then you can go for the current version. If they want more stability and they want to avoid bugs, then you can go for the N-1 version. And HANA Cloud is a quarterly release. So every year there will be four releases. So in quarter 1, quarter 2, like that. So in general, it is released in the mid month. So if there is 3 months in a quarter, for example, quarter 1 release was in February, right? And then sometimes it gets delayed. But yeah, in general, there will be four releases every year. And you can choose between the latest and the latest -1, right? So we'll go with the latest. And this password is the administrator password. It is used for both the DB admin and HDL admin. So you have to, it expires after every 180 days. There is no way where you can say password never expires because of security concerns, right? So you have to keep generating the password and updating it. So here also when you're setting up the instance, you give some password and then you should remember it. And here is a important tool from an administrator perspective, which is the uh, entitlement unit estimator, right? Or capacity unit estimator. So yeah, so coming to this cost estimator. So if you see here, uh, so here is the tiering, right? So where it says 16 GB is going to be in memory, which means 16 GB of RAM, and then it is saying 80 GB is going to be disk. Right? That's how the dynamic tiering looks like. And in general, if you're an application developer or if you are the database developer, there is this concept of having temperatures and data. So you have the latest or the data that you always access as hot data, and that will be kept in memory. Whereas the data that you less frequently use will be categorized as cold data, and that will be stored in disk. Or even just if you are keeping data for archiving purposes, it can be moved to a nearline storage device. Right. So all these are done for cost optimization, because yes, all customers wants all the query to be faster, but if that is the case, then they have to have a very huge in-memory size, and if they have a very huge in-memory size, that's going to cost them a lot, right? So the customers have to decide like which is the only chunk of data that they use on day-to-day basis, right? So for example, if you are talking about financial data, the customers mostly use the current year's financial data very frequently, and they use the last year's financial data maybe once in a while, maybe during quarterly meetings or something, when they compare this year's quarter performance to last year's quarter performance, something like that. They'll use it, but they'll use it less frequently. And some old, like 5 years old financial data, they will rarely use it, but for some auditing purposes or for legal purposes, they still have to keep the data. So that data can be kept in nearline storage or archive devices, so the cost will be optimized. So now coming to the details of how to check the exact entitlement, there is a tool created by SAP which can help you decide, okay, so what is going to be the estimated usage or estimated cost per month, right? So here the easiest way is to use the t-set sizing, right? So here, like we discussed, there is some GB of hard data. Generally that is the RAM size, and then you have some GB of warm data, and that is the disk size, and then you have some cold data, that is the archive or the nearline storage, that size. So if you go with large, then basically the system is taking, okay, 480, 960, 550, 50 TB, right? If you go with medium, it is giving some sizes, and then if you want to adjust, if you want to pick one size, and then if you want to adjust, you can adjust that. Or if you want to go with standard sizes, you can go with that also. But if you see here, as I adjust this sizes, you see the cost actually changing, and the capacity units. This is not direct cost, but this is directly related to cost. So you can see the capacity unit changing, right? So the smaller I go, it's cheaper. The bigger I go, it's going to be costly. And it also depends on the hyperscaler, right? SAP supports 3 hyperscalers in all regions. And then if it is a customer in China, they also support Ali Cloud, because in China there are some restrictions with the other hyperscalers. So if your customer is especially from China, and you would also get an option from SAP to subscribe from Ali Cloud. But yeah, so if I go to different, different hyperscalers, then
Ram, have you clicked on like instances in progress of getting subscribed, right? Created, because if you just finish that steps so that it will take time in between while you explain.
yeah, that's a good idea. Sure, Ankit, I'll do that. Yeah, so it is now getting created. So in the meantime, we'll discuss about the CU. Yeah, thank you, Ankit, for pitching. Yeah.
So just one question, Ram. Here, if I choose on that, the TC size as a large, the large one, it has the 50 TB cold data, right? So it is going to be reserved for the data lake, or it can be used with the HANA database itself.
No, it is for HANA database. So if you want data lake, here is the service type data lake. So I have to select data lake, and then I have to make the adjustment in here. So this is the storage of data lake. So the previous screen, it was purely for HANA database itself.
So
So this is the
if you
archive.
want to move the old data from the HANA database, instead of using the data lake, I can move it to the 50 TB, the cold data storage.
Yes, correct. So generally for archiving, you do not use a data lake because still you are archiving the data which is structured data. It is not unstructured or semi-structured. So generally you do something called as dynamic tiering. So you just say, you just mark which slice of data or which partition of data is hot, warm and cold. And then the system does it for you. So the system keeps the hot data in the memory, warm data in the disk, and then the cold data in the nearline storage.
So we don't need to manually move the whole data to the cold storage. Will it be done by
No,
the
you don't need
BTP?
to do that. Yes, you don't need to do that.
Okay. Then what is the main difference of this? Already in HANA database, we're having 50 terabytes of cold storage. On top of it, why do you have to go? Why should you have to go for the HANA data lake? Will it have more storage comparing with the HANA database?
Uh, Not necessarily more storage. So the type of storage is different. So for example, yes, I mean both the uh, data lake storage and the cold storage, the cost will be kind of, so for example, I increase some 1 TB here. So you see here it was like maybe I'll compare 1 TB to 2 TB. So 1 TB is 68 CUs, and then uh, 2 TB is 136. So 1 TB of the data lake costs me around 68 CUs. And then if you see here, uh, my cold storage. So if I just increase one, so it is also, consider this as 800. So if I increase one, so 872. So kind of around the same value. So that was 68. This is 72. The storage cost is around the same value. Maybe the data lake is even a little bit cheaper. But the main idea in the data lake is the type of the data you store there, right? And the type of accesses you get to that data. Can you store structured data in data lake files? Yes, of course you can store. But in general, people don't store structured data in data lake files. So they store either semi-structured or just text files, unstructured, purely unstructured text files from some data pump. So they create some scripts like in Python or R or any programming language to scrap data from web or to get data from some APIs, and then the output of those data pump will be a HDLF file, right? That HANA data lake file will be stored in this storage. So the type of data that is getting stored in a cold storage versus the lake will be different.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay. Right. So basically using the CU, you can check by adjusting various parameters here. And how do you decide all these parameters is you cannot directly go and ask the customer like how many CPUs you want, or how much for the storage. At least you have something called as the HANA sizing calculator. So if you are moving from HANA on-prem say to HANA Cloud, then in the HANA on-prem system you have to run that HANA sizing tool, and then it will give you exactly okay what is the storage you need. But for the compute etc, like if you want to know how much CPU you want, things like that, you have to talk to the application team or the technical consultants, and then understand what are they planning to use the system for. Are they planning to run any predictive analytics library? Are they planning to run any job that requires a significant amount of GPU? And then is there any yearly pattern, like in this customer every year there is a Black Friday sale or something big happens, and on that particular day or particular month or particular week they will experience a spike. So all that you have to factor in, and then you have to talk to team, you have to conduct workshops, you have to bring in different stakeholders, understand all the requirements from how much network data transfer is required, how much storage required, how much compute required, and then you can find out the exact amount of capacity units that's going to be consumed for your particular customer size that you are expecting, right? So for that you can use this tool. Now let's check if this is created. Okay, so it is created. So any more questions on this? Sorry, yeah. Any questions on the capacity? I think it's just a tool basically. So you have to adjust the size and then you have to find out how many capacity units are going to be charged. And why is it not directly euros or dollars, but capacity unit is because of the pricing, right? So the customers SAP, decides the price based on the customer. So if your customer has a different kind of deal with SAP, they'll get a different price. Like it depends on various factors, like how many years they have been a customer, how big is the system, what are the discounts they get, what are the trading terms between SAP and the customer. So in general, the sizing is by the technical team, like by the administrators. The sizing is done only in capacity units. The actual cost can vary depending on your customer, and that will be taken care by the SAP Connect and the sales team and people like that. So you only have to worry about the capacity units, because that's what eventually drives the price. So even you don't know the exact price, you can talk in terms of capacity units internally, like when you talk to the customers or with the other technical teams, etc. Okay, so now we have our HANA
One
instance.
question, Ram, actually. Here shows a scale out node, one node is there, right?
Mhm.
So if you want to add one more, another node to this HANA database,
Mhm.
so how to do that actually?
So
Because it's
here
going
we
to have a
cannot do
different host name
that
or
because it is a free instance. I think we cannot do that. But in general, if you are using a paid entitlement, then basically when you are creating it in the scale out and even in the replicas for fault tolerance, in the configuration screen itself, when we are creating an instance, those are all configurable options which you can change. But here in the trial, you cannot change that. But in a real customer sub account, you should be able to change that.
so you want to say that in trial account we can't do the replication setup and we can't test out the HA setup also?
I guess so, if I'm not wrong, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so if you see here, now if you have multiple instances which are running, and then you want to understand the health and the overview, you can just click the instance, and then here you have the general system overview of this particular HANA instance. And at the top, you see that the running or deactivated those status, and then you can also see the version, and it is saying up to date because we went for the current version. And then you see the availability zone, which is our data center basically. And we have the total backup size, automatic backup, and the backup retention, etc. One thing to note about this trial instance of HANA database is that every 12 hours or every 24 hours, the database stops, right? So you cannot use it for any productive purposes. So intentionally, the database will stop every few hours. And then if you again want to continue, you can go and again you can start the database as admin. But yeah, it is only for trial purposes. You cannot use for any productive purpose. And if you come down here, you will see the memory usage, the compute, the CPU usage, and the storage usage, etc. So if you remember, we created 16 GB over 80 GB, right? 16 GB of memory over 80 GB of disk. So by default, even though we created 16 GB, by default, the system uses almost, 6 GB for the internal tables, the HANA software itself, and all that takes this much GB. So you have around, 10 GB that is available for us to create tables and things like that. And basically, yeah, so these are all the different parameters you can quickly view at a glance. Now let's go into some of the tools. So you see here, we have three main tools. So one is the HANA Cockpit, I'll open that. I'll open all the tools. The second is the HANA Database Explorer. So I'm using the password that we gave while creating, right? So if you remember, it was dbadmin and then password at 123. So I'm giving that, and this particular tool is connecting to our HANA instance. Okay. So now, if you come from the old HANA world, like you would have heard about tools like HANA Studio, etc., right? So which are like standalone on-premise tools which you have to install in the system that you're using, and then you have to use it. But now with HANA Cloud and BTP and all this cloud technologies, even the tools that are used to administer, etc., they have also become cloud tools, right? They have also become as a service. So you don't have to install anything, and you can manage and monitor your HANA instance from the cloud. So that gives you flexibility, like anywhere around the world you are there, you can just access this particular URL, and then you can basically monitor, and then you can adjust the parameters, you can create users, all those things. So like I said, there are two main UIs or two main tools that you use. So one is called the HANA Database Explorer. So here it is for the HANA developers, right? So who are going to create the different tables, the different views, etc. So in general, from admin perspective, here you don't have to do much, right? So very limited, you will use it. But one thing is some administrative activities like creating a user, assigning them roles, creating roles, all those can also be done as from SQL, right? So if you want to do that in SQL, then you can go here, you can add a new SQL window, and then you can type the command here, right? So for example, create user command. If you want to bulk create, say 10 users, then here, instead of going here and then doing it. Any questions? Sorry, any questions to me? Okay, so let me continue. Yeah, like I said, so only thing from admin perspective that you want to use in the database explorer is if you want to run some SQL, then you can use the database explorer, and then you can go to this SQL console and you can do it from here. But from admin perspective, this is the main interface, right? So from here also you can call the SQL console. So that's why they have given it here, because that's one thing the admins frequently use. So if you want, you can open SQL console from here, and again it will open the database explorer and open the SQL console for you, right? So now coming to the here, you also see the main. Just give me a second. It's loading something. So like here where we saw a dashboard view of what is happening, right? So you also have multiple tabs. You can see what are the services. So in the backend, there are multiple services like the name server, index server, compile server, etc. So these are all the services that should be in the running status. So for example, if the name server is not running, the HANA cannot identify like which job is running where, and then it cannot route things. So from admin perspective, all of this should be running. If something is a failure, then you have to see why it failed, and then you have to restart that particular service. And if you have if you allow any whitelisted IPs and you want to connect to this HANA instance, so all the connection details are here. So in general, if your development team asks you, they can generally go here and check this for themselves. But for some reason, if the development team asks you to share the HANA details, then you can share those details from here. So HANA instance ID, the landscape, the port number, this is the SQL endpoint, etc. So this SQL endpoint is interesting. So it is basically the instance ID followed by the landscape followed by the port number. So this SQL endpoint is useful for you to connect third-party tools. So if you, for example, if say you don't like the database explorer, you want to use some other SQL tool like DBeaver or VS Code or something, then you can connect to this SQL endpoint and you can start using it, right? And then you have multiple tabs here. which are like a snapshot view. But now when you go here, this is basically the blown up view of that uh, same snapshot views. So here, for example, now I have services which are all running, right? So it is saying running, all services are running. So that means there is no failures. But if there are some services that are failed, here you can see them. For example, say the name server has failed. So it will say name server stopped. Right. So now you want to check what happened. Then you come to this view and then you click manage services. And then basically you can see, okay, so what are all the services that are running? For example, this name server, this is a service, this is stopped or something. Then again, basically you can check why. I mean, you can check different things like the memory and any. Sometimes what happens is you will get, so as the system keeps growing bigger, like the data keeps growing bigger, there will be out of memory issue. So one of the very common issues in HANA is out of memory issue. So in those cases, some of the services will fail. And then you have to see if the heap memory allocated is not released, things like that. So you can come here and then you can also, reset some of the memory statistics. So memory statistics are reset. And you can set up alerts and then you can go to those alerts to check if any alerts have reached. So when do you set up alerts is if something fail, not only if something fails, but also you can set up preemptive alerts, like if uh, a particular threshold is reached. So if 80% of memory is consumed, 80% of disk is consumed, something like that, you can set up alerts. So here we have the alert definitions. Right. So see, we don't have any alerts because it's just a new instance we created. But as you keep using the instance, you will see a lot of alerts here. And then you can filter those alerts based on the time range, based on the source of alert, and based on the category. Whether it is a memory alert, you will just check only for memory alerts. If it's a CPU alert or anything, you can filter here, and then it will, because there will be thousands of alerts, you have to narrow down which alert you are looking for, and that can be done from this alert view. So all these are called applications, right? And you can jump from one applications to other directly from here. So once you get comfortable with this administrator interface, so in general, you will not go to this home screen every time and then you use things from here. So when starting out, maybe yes, you can go here each time and you have the helpful navigation. So if I'm checking services, if I want to go to the services, I have a hyperlink. If I'm checking alerts, if I want to go to alerts, I have a hyperlink. But in general, you can also jump directly from here. So you can give switch application, and then here you can search for something. So for example, I want to go to performance monitor or memory monitor. I can just directly click the performance monitor and then I can say open. Right. So here I can see the performance monitor. So it is a graph. It is showing a time and there are various color coding. So you can see that. So now everything is getting visualized. So it is kind of noisy here. So if I just want to see how much CPU is used, I'm seeing the CPU. So it is generally, this is where the instance started. So from here, the CPU is flatlining. So there is no peak or anything in the CPU side. So CPU, there is no issues. So now I am going to check the memory. So I can see that memory is, as from the start, it is constantly going up. And so far there is no, memory problems yet. But yeah, so constantly the memory looks like from the graph, it is going up like this. You can analyze various things here. And here also you have multiple tabs for alerts. And then two of the most important tab is the running statement. So if some developer or some application is running some SQL in the background, you will be able to see here, and it will show you exactly what is the statement that is running. So if I click more, I can see the exact SQL code, and then I can see, okay, So who is the user that is running it, and how much time it took, and then is it blocking any other things, and how much memory it is using, etc. So this becomes important as an administrator, because if you have memory problem, you are going to analyze these things. You are going to analyze, okay, so what are all the statements that are used, and which took most memory, and who is the user that run it, and what is the exact SQL that runs, so that it will help you, share your findings with the developers and customers, saying that, okay, this is the particular statement that caused the memory leak, and that's why the HANA server broke, right? And then we have something called expensive statement tracing. So in here, in running statements, it will show all the currently running statements, but not the old ones, or not the expensive ones. So if you go to expensive statements, so there is a configurable parameter uh, in HANA, so where you can say how much, what is the amount of time it should take to become an expensive statement. Say, for example, if a SQL takes more than 10 seconds, then we categorize that as expensive statement. Then those kind of SQLs will come under this expensive statement trace. And you can see, oh, okay, so exactly what is the start time, how much duration it took, and you can see the exact SQL also. And you can see how much CPU, memory, everything. And again, all these are useful for analyzing what went wrong, or analyzing what happened in the HANA system. And like this, there are multiple applications which are helpful for your admin tasks. So all those will be available under your instance. You have to go to this HANA Cockpit. So HANA Cockpit is where you administer and monitor things. And if you are a database developer, then you go to the Database Explorer. But from an admin perspective, if you want to do some user creation, all those things, you can also go to Explorer and use a SQL console to do that. But yeah, in general, you can also do it from the UI here itself. Okay. So yeah, any questions specifically?
Yes, Ram. Ram, you told about the HA setup and replication setup, right? Can you just
Mhm.
show us the demo of the HA setup and replication with your customer account? Because in trial, because these are the two things no mainly needed in the no real scenario actually for the HANA database.
Okay. So let's see. Here also I should be able to create a replication. So let's see if it allows.
Okay.
So for example, we have a currently running HANA instance, and we want to set up a replication for this HANA instance. So let's try if it allows.
So,
So if you come down here, you have create replication. Okay. So I have two registered connections. Um, so Ankit, are you on the call?
Yes, Ram, tell me.
Yeah. Are these your systems? Do you know the details for this?
So no, I'm not sure what it is.
Okay. So basically, one of the participants, they wanted to see how we can create a replication from HANA Cloud. So we need one more uh, HANA system to do the data replication process basically. So that's why I wanted to check. I said like in a trial instance, you don't have the setup to actually do the replication, but yeah, they just wanted to see that, because from a customer perspective, they are saying they require it.
So Ram, so this training doesn't cover all those stuffs. Okay, it's just introduction to HANA Cloud. Normally,
Mhm.
those topics are covered in HANA Database Administration training, and
Yeah.
I don't have anything right now on more instance for HANA,
Okay.
and we cannot
Okay
create one
then.
more in trial.
Okay. Okay. Sure. So yeah, basically you have to do it from here. So what this replication service does is, you know about the SLT and all these kind of replication technology, right? So where you have one table in one database, and then you can replicate this table in another database. That's basically what you're trying to do. So if that is the case, if that is your customer requirement, so you have to go to this create replication, and then you have to fill in the details of the other system. That's all. But currently, yeah, I mean, it is not part of this training as well. We don't have another system and all those details. So but basically, if you are doing this, it's going to be like a form filling. You have to fill, you have to give a connection name, you have to give the host and port number of the receiving partner, and you have to give the username, password, and just create connection. And then it will ask for a replication username, password, and finally it will ask for the replication objects, which is nothing but the tables. So once you select and confirm that, the replication will be set up. So you
No,
can
no,
just set
sorry
up
to
like
interrupt actually. So you're talking about SLT replication, but I'm talking about HANA database, the system data, the whole database data replication actually. Let's say that if the primary DB is down, the
failover. Okay,
secondary
failover
DB,
instance. So like I
yes,
said, like
correct.
that is, I mean, again, they don't give replicas for uh, free accounts basically. So that you can add here as add replica
Mm-hmm.
again. So let's see if okay. So now I got it. So what you meant. So for example, this is an instance. So here it says zero replicas. So that itself is a hyperlink. So you can click and then you can say add replicas. Uh, but again, yeah. So in this system, see, deploying replica is not available in HANA Cloud trial instance. So if you are in an actual system, you can add the replica here, and then there are like process documentation for this which you can refer. These are very simple to create replica. So everything is done by the I mean the system itself. There's nothing much we have to do. So only thing is you have to define how many availability zones you want. For example, there was this very famous instance with one of the SAP customers. So they had a primary database that was down, and then the failover kicked in, and the availability zone A was the primary, and that availability zone was also hit by some disaster, and that was also down. Luckily the customer had one more replica. So that's where like you have to decide from how critical your data is and how much cost the customer is willing to pay. So only thing you have to decide is how many replicas you want and based on what zones. So for example, if a customer is sitting in Europe and then you create a replica in China, that is good to keep your data safe, because if something happens to the entire Europe, your data is still safe in China. But again, on a normal day-to-day activity basis, the latency will be high, the query execution time will be more. Like all these things have to be discussed with the customer. So the process of creating replica itself in the system technically is very simple. In actual system, you will see the multiple options here, and you have technical documents to follow exactly what you need to do. But the functional aspects of how you decide where to put the replica, how many replicas you want, what are the candidate data centers that you choose, all this have to be, it is like a art where you sit with the customer, discuss with them, and find out where the primary users are located, and then try to keep some of the primary database very close to them, and replica also somewhat close to them. And if you have one more replica, then that can be somewhat quite far from their primary and replica, because then if both primary and replica are hit, you don't want the third also to be failing, so you can have it quite far away. So all that will take some discussion and workshop with the customer, but yeah, technically it is simple.
Okay.
A scale out node also, yeah. So basically, you have to edit it again. Only thing is, HANA trial instance will not allow you to do that. But yeah, so for example, here they have themselves given, for more information, follow this hands-on tutorial. Like that, for all this technical setup, you have the admin cookbooks and technical tutorials, etc., which you can follow exactly. The only thing is, the very first projects that you're working on, there you will learn from your colleagues and mentors and architects, like how they involve in a customer in the discussion process of deciding what is the scale out they are expecting. Like I said, it depends on, for example, if they are retail customers, they'll have sales, they'll have Black Fridays, they'll have Cyber Monday, they'll have, Amazon Great Indian Sale, all these kind of things where they need some scale out because the applications will go crazy, right? So you have to decide, okay, how much scale out, and is that going to be a regular scale out or periodic spike? And then availability zone also, like I said, you have to decide where to put those availability zone, all those things. And again, the main thing is also cost. So only primary DB will cost you so and so CU, and then if you add more scale out, more replica, that is going to cost twice, thrice, 4 times more. So all those need to be discussed and done.
Okay. Can you just go to the
Ram, how can we
general screen?
how,
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry?
Ram, how sorry.
There's a question actually. First answer that, Ram. Then we'll discuss.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Ram, how can we connect this HANA database from our HANA Studio?
From a normal HANA Studio, it is not possible to connect to HANA Cloud. So, like I said, HANA Studio is for the old HANA system, like the HANA on-prem, even HANA 2, after some service packs, it does not support HANA. HANA Studio from SAP perspective is deprecated. It's not officially supported tool, but I know customers are still
So
using
why you
it.
want to do that? So you have Business Application Studio on BTP to able to do those jobs, right? What you can do in HANA Cloud, HANA Studio, right? Here, I know in HANA Studio you can do administrative tasks, which you can do here from Cockpit, which Ram said, right? Even if you want to do development, then you can do it with Business Application Studio, right?
Correct. And also, if you want a local software to connect to the HANA Cloud, the two software I will recommend is in VS Code IDE, you have extensions for HANA Cloud. You can use that. Or another thing you have is something called as DBeaver, right? So which is a multi database application, which is third party, it's not SAP. So you can use this DB viewer and then you can connect to this endpoint. That's one way. The other way is, yeah, in VS Code, you can add extensions for HANA Cloud and do that. But like the SAP's move is towards the cloud. They want you to avoid using offline tools. That's why they stopped supporting SAP HANA Studio itself. So like Ankit said, if you're doing some application development in BAS itself, you can use the HANA related objects. Or if you're doing just SQL development, like creating table view, etc., you can use the DB Explorer. But yeah, if you really want an offline tool, you can use these two tools. One is the DB Viewer, DBeaver, this one, and the other is VS Code HANA Cloud plugins. So you have some extension. If you have a VS Code, you can go and check the extensions, and then there are some database explorer extensions. So you can use either of that. Even there is a tutorial how to set up this VS Code extension.
Can you show us how can we access this HANA database from BAS, like business applications?
Maybe Ankit, can you show
Then you
them?
would need, guys, so you will need a project of so you need a Capcom project you have to create, where you have to set up all those folders, apps, security folders, DB folders, so that that needs a proper project setup for a development, and then you can consume the DB there. So you have to run all those commands to connect the DB instance, and definitely you need to get the DB instance details from the details you see which Ram showed you. So normally that developers will do, not you will do. You will have to provide the details as a DB admins.
So the
So
communication user is only DB admin, but not any other, right?
Yeah, you can create users, more users you can create. So user management section is there in HANA Cloud, right, Ram? So like we have monitoring alerts, that the way same way you have user management in this HANA Cockpit.
Here. So if you see here in my screen, so this is user and authorization management. So basically users and user groups, roles, role groups, everything will be created from here. And yeah, for example, if you want to create a user, can go to users, and then you can just create new user and you can create a user, right? So yeah, as simple as that. So basically here you can decide whether they have to have a password or you want to force the password to change. So all the HANA on-prem, like whatever you had in on-prem, you have also in HANA Cloud. And
So
yeah,
now
like
it
Ankit
is
said,
short intro. So now it is a standalone database, right? How to consume this database to a BTP service?
yeah, so mainly the reason they have kept it like this is because then it becomes like a plug and play. Previously, the application and the database were very tightly coupled. So if you develop something on the application level, that's tied to one database very closely. So it is not easy for you to change the underlying database. Now, like Ankit said, in BaaS, what happens is you create an application irrespective of the underlying database instance, right? So you have some setup configuration files. That's all, but whatever you're creating on top of that, that application, the runtime will be not tightly coupled. So what happens is the developer can give the details of any HANA instance, and then they can just again redeploy all their application, and it will get it will generate the runtime objects in that particular instance. So if you want to again change the HANA instance, you want to go for a bigger instance, or you want to go for a different availability zone, so it's easy to change now. It becomes like a Lego block, the application. You can just plug and play into any HANA instances. But yeah, I mean, from admin perspective, I don't think it's something that you require. So from application developer perspective, they'll definitely know how to connect to a HANA instance, which is running in the cloud.
Okay,
Yeah,
later.
it's about no how to connect the HANA DB to the cloud connector. That is the question, Ankit, actually. Because there is an option
Okay,
with creating a HANA
so
DB, it was asking us whether to connect to the cloud connector
correct.
or
So
not.
I didn't choose that option to give to get it to the cloud connector. But
Mhm.
yeah, so if I have given selected that option, what happens is, so everything like is connected to cloud connector through the sub account level, right? So when you create an instance, so if you enable the cloud connector, what it does is in your cloud connector, you have seen a lot of sub accounts there connected. So here, what happens? This instance will also create uh, cloud connector entry with this particular sub account. So yeah, like Ankit said, it will take its own session is required to cover that entire workflow.
Okay, now it is disabled status, right? It can just show
So we
how to
didn't choose
enable it.
while creating, we didn't choose to enable a cloud connector.
Yeah, now I decided to enable. Here we can come and enable it directly.
Yeah, you can come and enable it. Yes.
Yeah.
So here,
Okay, got it.
allow the instance to connect to on-premise. So that will just enable the cloud. So anything, I mean, anything other than changing the software version, only few things you cannot change once the DB is spin, right? So those few things will be disabled by default. For example, here I cannot change the software version. So if you went with the latest one and then you want to go for N-1, you cannot do that. But other than that, couple of things are always changeable, right? For example, if for example, here the memory is not changeable, but yeah, the backup retention time is changeable. So you will automatically come to this admin panel, and then you can decide, I mean, you can see what are all the changeable options once the DB is running. Only few things are not changeable, and some
Okay.
things that will require a restart, and when you just review and save, the system itself will say that, so do you require a restart or not? So it is saying that save changes with restart, right? That means it requires a restart. So I have to say yes, I want a restart. If some of the, for changing some of the things, it might not require a restart. So yeah, that is one thing again you have to decide. Thank you everyone, bye.